Welcome to a presentation about this week's new coffee release at Blending Room, which is Pinhal, a Peaberry from Brazil. Now, in these videos, I'm going to talk about the coffee a little bit. I'll do a roast profile analysis and I'll discuss how I went about actually roasting this coffee. I'll then also do a tasting and convey the flavor, and I may give some suggestions about how you can brew it towards the end. Like with many of the coffees that I purchase, this came from Falcon Speciality and Matt Sealby. Now, this was purchased in the bubble of this huge coffee price thing that's going on in the world. So this is a pretty dear coffee, not just because it's delicious, but because the global markets were right at the peak when I purchased 8 bags of it. Anyway, I do feel that there is still value in this. It is still a stonking coffee, and when I describe the flavors later on, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you want to know a little bit more about Falcon Speciality, I've linked to their website down below, inside which there's lots of information about their sourcing methodologies and the countries in which they operate. It's good reading, and it gives you an indication as to the type of green coffee that I enjoy buying for Blending Room. Now, with the intro done, without further ado, let's do the roast profile analysis. On the screen now, you will see a curve that I have selected as my reference curve for this coffee going forward. There were a couple of other batches that I had done prior to this that didn't quite go to plan. They have cupped well and they're both really delicious, but on the cupping table, this is the profile that I want to lock in for all future batches. There will be a couple of nuanced changes that I will make through time, especially as the weather in the UK begins to improve, and with that you get a little bit of a higher temperature inside of the roastery. The green coffee will be different, and also the roasting environment will be slightly different too. So I will mutate the profiles through the coming weeks as I roast through this volume of coffee, but this is the reference curve going forward. When I was designing the roast profile, I was mindful that this is a Peaberry, and a Peaberry has a very different shape and size to all of the other coffees that I'm currently roasting. Because of this, I had to think about how heat was going to be applied to the coffee beans in flight as the drum paddles agitate the beans throughout the roast cycle. I hadn't actually roasted a Peaberry on the Loring before, so I've got no reference. Yes, I've roasted on the Probat, but I have no data when it comes to roasting in an air roaster like the Loring. So what I had to do is fall back to the roast methodologies in which I'm using on many of the prior roasts. So I used a pyramid heat approach, and I was trying to think about how those beans would be accepting heat through time. I hypothesized that if coffee has been tasting delicious with this particular heat application on all other coffees, I'm somewhat likely to have a delicious coffee with the Peaberry. And for these exploration batches, I'd need to lock into a known quantity in that heat approach and adjust them where I need based on the flavors that I perceive on the cupping table. So the end criteria of this roast was a roast time of 8 minutes and 53 seconds, a development time of 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is 16.9% of the total roast time. The end temperature was 213.1 degrees Celsius, and as you can see, there's a nice curve to the profile. There aren't many bumps and dips within the rate of rise curve, and there is this ever declining slope, and it has become my style as a roaster over these past few years, based on information I'd picked up via Scott Rayo and other people on the internet, and of course on the cupping table. One other aspect I'm going to talk about is the roast color. So I'm just going to do a color analysis now. I have pre-ground this coffee on a setting that I always use. The important thing when it comes to doing the color analysis is you need to use coffee of a similar age, you need to use the same grind size, so that the parameters are always the same when you come to do the color analysis. So this is 91.4 on the Agtron Gourmet scale, which is extremely light. It's the type of color that I enjoy roasting for filter. I could push this to a slightly higher number or a lighter coloration, but I actually like the balance that this color spectrum gives to me. Now for a quick tidy up and then the tasting. So as I do with any taste assessment, I'm going to first use my nose to try and pick up any perceivable aroma, because aroma is an incredibly important part of your olfactory system. So let's dig my nose in. And what I get with this is a treacly, licorice vibe. There's a bit of brown malt in there as well. And I don't think that that's to do with the roasting. I think that's just the inherent characteristic of the coffee. So let's take the first taste. Now, my first taste is always to describe the acidity and fruit characteristics if they're available. And in this cup, I get a cherry-like stone fruit. Next, I'm going to think about the other characters that this coffee brings and in the midsection. So how does the fruit, if it's there or perceivable, interplay with body and mouthfeel and those sorts of things? And the dominant character with this is this treacly, syrupy vibe on your palate. There is that licorice characteristic that I had on the aroma inside of the cup, and same too with the brown, syrupy, sweet treacle thing going on. It really is lovely, and it marries with the cherry stone fruit really, really well. So how about the finish? Again, lots of syrupiness on the palate, brown sugars, caramels, and chocolates too. It's a milk chocolate through to a dark milk, so 35% to 45% cocoa mass. It's very classic when it comes to a Brazil. You can perceive that this is a coffee from that country, but obviously a really good coffee from that country. So with those flavors, how would I best brew this at home? Well, look, I have a strong bias for filter coffee, and this black filter coffee is delightful. It gives me everything that I want. Acidity in a controlled level, sweetness, and a lovely long finish in the cup. Hybridized brewers such as the Clever Dripper would really pull out the sweetness in this. Same too if you were to brew this in a full immersion brew, such like a cafetiere. Expect lots of body, lots of sweetness, but maybe a downshift in the perceivable cherry character in the cup. If you had this as espresso, and I would recommend you try this as espresso, you'll get some bright acidity in there from the cherry, but it should be nice and controlled because there's lots of syrupy sweetness in there too. Not that I drink milk, but I do also think that this would pair well with milk. If you do, buy Gold Top from Jersey cows. It's much better for you. Don't get any of this skimmed rubbish. Buy Gold Top. And on that bombshell, I think this presentation is over. That was Pinhal, a Peaberry from Brazil. It tastes delightful, and as a reminder, it is cherry, treacle, licorice, and milk chocolate on the finish. As usual, this is available to purchase now online. It will be with me at Beverley Market between 8 AM and 4 PM every Saturday. And of course, we're open at the roastery between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday, where you're welcome to pick up a bag of this and any of the other coffees that we have on our portfolio at that time. Until then, enjoy your coffee if you pick up a bag. See you again next time.